Happy Friday, everyone. Thanks for joining us today on this edition of Business Daily. I'm Lee in Seoul. Let's get started with a look at today's highlights. Korean businesses in the automobile, food, and cosmetics sectors have all taken a hit from China's retaliatory measures over the deployment of THAAD. Next month, many Koreans will enjoy an extended 10-day holiday period, but it seems that won't be the case for some workers. These stories and more coming right up. Despite a 10-month rally in exports, the Korean government says the country's economic recovery is still on shaky ground, pointing to a dip in facility investment. A Friday report from the Finance Ministry shows facility investment dropped more than 5% in July compared to the previous month. It was largely due to the high base effect with adjustments being made on new semiconductor manufacturing equipment. Korean exports are continuing to surge, seen at more than $47 billion in August, a 17.5% jump compared to a year earlier. China's opposition to the deployment of THAAD has been hurting Korean companies for some time now. A state-run Chinese newspaper is now reporting that a partnership between Seoul and Beijing in the automobile sector might be coming to an end. Our Yoon-shin reports.
China has long opposed South Korea's move to install the U.S. anti-missile battery THAAD, and Chinese local media now hints that the nation's latest retaliatory measures could lead to a possible termination of a long-time business partnership. Citing an industry insider, Chinese daily Global Times reported that state-owned enterprise Bike Group is, quote, fed up with its Korean partner Hyundai Motor's greed and arrogance, and that officials at Bike are determined to solve the issue, even if that might risk them losing their 15-year-old joint venture, Beijing Hyundai Motor Company. Hyundai Motor officials denied the report and criticized its malicious intent. Korean automobile giants suffered a sharp downfall in demand from China, with Hyundai Motor sales dropping nearly 41% over the first half of this year compared to the previous year, and Kia Motor sales plunged to less than 50%. The losses are largely due to the world's second-largest economy's boycott campaign against Korean products, one of its series of retaliatory actions against Seoul's decision to deploy THAAD. Beijing's foreign ministry repeatedly claimed that the missile defense mechanism undermines the region's strategic balance and its security interests. Yoon-shin, Business Daily.
And the automobile sector isn't the only one that's suffering from Beijing's retaliatory measures. Korean retail giants, particularly in the food and cosmetics sectors, have reported damages worth hundreds of millions of dollars from the fallout. Our Kim Ji-yeon has more.
Continued economic retaliation by Beijing over Seoul's deployment of the anti-missile system THAAD is taking a toll on Korean retailers. Korean retail giant Lotte has taken the heaviest blow after its food and cosmetics products were blacklisted in China for allegedly failing to pass safety tests. Lotte estimates nearly $888 million worth of damages were incurred this year, with 87 out of 112 Lotte Mart stores in China being shut down. Lotte's department stores were also affected by a sharp plunge in the number of Chinese tourists following a sales ban on tour packages to Korea back in March. The stores reported operating losses of around $26.5 million during the second quarter. Operating profits of Korea's biggest cosmetics maker, Amore Pacific, also fell 58% on year during the April to June period. Confectionery giant Orion also saw its profits tumble 64% in the first half this year compared to the same six-month period in 2016. The Korea Tourism Organization says the number of Chinese tourists plummeted almost 70% on year in July. It painted a gloomy outlook on the situation, saying it may worsen before it gets any better after Seoul deployed additional THAAD launchers in response to North Korea's growing nuclear threat. Kim Ji-yeon, Business Daily.
The Eastern Economic Forum, which wrapped up on Thursday, is designed to help develop the Russian Far East and bring together leaders from the Asia-Pacific region. And our Kim Hae-sung outlines what this year's meeting was all about, an expert analysis on President Moon's northern policy.
At the Russian port of Vladivostok, the Third Eastern Economic Forum, which kicked off Wednesday, has come to a close. The annual forum was launched in 2015 to help develop the eastern part of Russia.
The Eastern Economic Forum is part of Russian President Putin's New East policy, outlined in 2012 to attract more investment in the Russian Far East. This region is underdeveloped and has a small population, but with its abundant gas reserves and marine resources, it has enormous value and investment potential.
According to the EEF, 27% of gas reserves and 17% of oil reserves in the Asia-Pacific region are concentrated in the Russian Far East, but the level of development of known oil and gas deposits is still low at around 12%.
Putin sees the Russian Far East as the country's new growth engine and a strategic region that could connect Russia to the Asia-Pacific. Since 2014, Russia saw zero to negative economic growth due to international sanctions and a drop in oil prices. But the Russian Far East region saw around 5% annual economic growth, showing just how much is being invested in the region.
But to further develop its chemical and petrochemical industry, Russia needs technology and infrastructure development, which is why Russia has been inviting leaders from the Asia-Pacific like the South Korean President Moon Jae-in and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe to its annual forum. At his keynote speech, President Moon outlined 9 key areas of cooperation, including shipbuilding, railways, ports, agriculture, and seafood.
Given the North's provocations, railroad projects like Najin Hasan are unfeasible for now, so carrying out small yet feasible projects is key. South Korea has top-notch shipbuilding skills. It can help Russia build ships, containers, and logistics infrastructure, while we can import natural gas in line with the government's plan to shift away from nuclear energy.
Experts say Korea and Russia's economies are complementary, meaning there's room to expand exports and imports. Korean businesses can benefit from Russia's energy and its original technology, while Korea can in turn help build Russia's infrastructure and logistics through its applied technology.
For Russia, Korea is the best partner in the region. Unlike Japan and China, Korea hasn't had any major wars or conflicts with Russia. China and Russia are close partners, but Russia is always on guard against China's rapid rise.
To boost cooperation with Russia, experts say the formation of the Presidential Committee on Economic Cooperation with Northern countries is a good move.
Having a committee specializing in Russian Far East development would make two-way cooperation more efficient. The next step is to build trust by reviewing and carrying our existing cooperation projects and have more Russian experts at the Blue House to enhance mutual understanding.
According to the EEF, more than 200 agreements worth $32 billion were signed last year, but many of them haven't yet entered the practical stage.
Actual implementation of projects is not easy due to Russia's lack of global financing standards and sanctions that make private investment difficult. Government support in public-private partnerships would be important to help Korean businesses invest in the region and protect their interests.
The Asia-Pacific region is emerging as a strategic hub in the 21st century, with China, India, and Russia all pushing for initiatives to integrate the region economically. President Moon's Look North for Development policy is Korea's initiative to connect the Asia-Pacific. But all this marks just the beginning. To actually carry out the projects in a feasible manner, detailed plans and cooperation platforms would be needed. Kim Hae-sung, Business Daily.
Korean firms got some much-needed relief after U.S. lawmakers came to their defense in their legal battle with American appliance manufacturer Whirlpool. The American firm had called on U.S. trade authorities to impose global safeguard restrictions on imported washing machines. Whirlpool claims Samsung and LG have flooded the market with cheap machines, leaving them unable to compete. According to Inside U.S. Trade, Congressman Ralph Norman came to Samsung's defense, accusing Whirlpool of trying to remove fair competition while making profits. Samsung pointed out Whirlpool's market share exceeded 70% after it acquired Maytag in 2006, but it simply failed to embrace changes in the market. Apple is caught in a dilemma with its rival Samsung being the sole producer of the most important component in its new flagship smartphone. According to Apple Insider on Thursday, quoting an industry analyst, Samsung is the only firm that can produce OLED displays for the new iPhone, giving strong bargaining power to the Korean tech giant. The analyst said Apple is in urgent need of finding secondary sources, while adding that the firm is facing looming supply issues. The new iPhone 8 is set to be unveiled next Tuesday. And with that release, the battle in the smartphone market is set to heat up in the coming weeks. Looking to get a jump on Apple, Samsung has started taking pre-orders for its Galaxy Note 8 here in Korea, while LG Electronics is also calling out to the early birds with its V30 handset going on pre-sale next week. Our Won Jung-hwan tells us more.
Samsung Electronics has kicked off pre-orders for its new flagship smartphone, the Galaxy Note 8, ahead of the official September 21st release date. Tech lovers have been visiting Samsung stores across Korea to secure their pre-order for the company's latest device. Even though the Galaxy Note 8's release price is the highest ever in the Note series, around 400,000 phones have already been sold since pre-orders started yesterday, exceeding the total pre-order sales of its predecessor, the Galaxy Note 7. Galaxy Note 8 experience zones are open in 3,800 different locations throughout the country, the largest number in the company's history, and they will be open until next week.
I came here on the first day because I like the Note 8's powered-up signature S Pen and its design.
After the ugly recall of the Galaxy Note 7, which had a propensity to overheat and even explode due to a flawed battery design, this is Samsung's chance to regain a throne. But Samsung's biggest domestic rival, LG Electronics, has also been making great strides in recent years. Pre-orders for LG's V30 will start from next Thursday. LG has also set up experience zones mainly centered in train and subway stations and has prepared gifts for consumers who pre-order the full OLED display phone.
If you change the camera settings, you can experience the function that changes the image or quality on your screen.
The rush to launch is likely due to Apple announcing its 10th anniversary iPhone on September 12th. Samsung and LG are trying to sell as many devices as possible before Apple releases its new iPhone. Watchers say Apple's latest phone could be called the iPhone X, iPhone Edition, or simply just the iPhone 8. Won Jung-hwan, Business Daily.
With the Korean government designating October 2nd as a temporary holiday, workers may get as many as 10 days off, including the Chuseok holiday. But this is not necessarily good news for workers at small and mid-sized companies. Our Lee Ju-young tells us why.
This is a small and mid-sized plating company that supplies interior and exterior vehicle parts to Korea's major automakers. The plant, which employs about 80 workers, is set to close for the 10-day Chuseok holiday, but this is not necessarily good news for the workers nor for the firm. That's because overtime work would be inevitable after the holiday period ends, which in turn could cost the company an extra $13,000 in labor expenses.
Resting during the Chuseok holiday means we'll need to work on weekends, which will eventually cost more.
With fewer days to run the factories, employees are left with no choice but to work extra hours to meet delivery deadlines. The shutdown is also feared to impact production and the company's bottom line. Given the situation, a number of factories are choosing to keep their machines manned and running. In fact, a survey by the Korea Federation of SMEs on 250 small firms show that during the extended holiday period back in May this year, nearly 50% were unable to provide even a single day off.
Workers in the public sector and large firms not only get to rest, but also get paid more. Those working for small firms could lose their motivation if they don't get days off.
As the imbalance in pay and vacation days further exacerbates the nation's youth unemployment problem, experts say big firms need to be more flexible with delivery deadlines so their smaller counterparts can also rest. Critics are also calling on the government to adopt policies that provide tax breaks for SMEs, allowing their workers to get some much-needed downtime during holiday periods. Lee Ju-young, Business Daily.
And moving on to our coverage of the markets, we have our markets contributor Lee Ji-hye joining us on the line. Hello, Ji-hye.
Hello, Ji-yoon.
So tell us what we saw in the markets on the last trading day of the week.
Sure. Korean stocks were a mixed bag today after a week of cautious gains amid escalating tensions over North Korea's Sunday nuclear test. The benchmark Kospi closed 0.11% lower at 2,343.72 today, while the tech-heavy Kosdaq closed 0.64% lower at 654.29. Market bellwether Samsung Electronics rose 2%, along with SK Hynix rising 1.68%, and POSCO also gaining 1.96%. Hyundai Motors shed 1.81%, Kepco was down 1.32%, and Naver was also losing 0.41%. On the upward slope were venture capital firms, IT service, and semiconductors, while on the opposite end were cosmetics, electronics products, along with automobile parts.
Then what about the other major markets across Asia? How did they perform?
Well, in the absence of market cues, Asian equities were struggling to find a clear direction today, while the dollar posted sharp losses after the European Central Bank's tapering signal. Japan's Nikkei 225 slipped 0.63% after second quarter GDP data released earlier today showed 2.5% on-year growth, below the 4% expansion estimated in a preliminary reading. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index, as well as the Shanghai Composite Index on the mainland, were both trading higher this afternoon. Also in China, the country's exports in the month of August rose 5.5% in dollar terms on year, while imports grew 13.3%. Over in Australia, the S&P AAX 200 shed 0.02%, with losses in the energy and heavy-weighted financial sub-indexes weighing on the broader market.
So what market events should we keep an eye on as we head into next week?
Well, following a week of sluggish trade among ongoing threats with North Korea, the response from the UN Security Council, perhaps including a resolution on new sanctions, will definitely be a determining factor for foreign investors here in South Korea. Samsung Electronics is also expected to release data for its third quarter performance later in the week, with many predicting an upward revision of its expectations that could boost local markets overall. Analysts say a favorable tone for the semiconductor industry could be a key indicator for other sectors as well, especially the IT industry. Analysts are also eyeing the September meeting at the FOMC, an upcoming announcement by U.S. President Donald Trump on his tax reform plans, as well as the latest data on U.S. consumer price index. This has been Lee Ji-hye for Business Daily.
The European Central Bank held interest rates steady and made several announcements regarding its QE program following a meeting of its governing council. The future of ECB's bond buying program will be decided in its October meeting, while ECB President Mario Draghi showed concerns over low inflation rates. The bank is likely to maintain its 0% interest rate for the foreseeable future, likely to extend well beyond its asset purchase program. The strengthening euro is further weighing on the Eurozone's 2018 inflation forecast, now at 1.2% from the previous 1.3%. And concerns are mounting that the 2.4% gain in the euro currency since the last meeting in July might hamper the region's economic recovery. Time now for a look at some of the most important global business stories from the week with our Eunice Kim joining us in the studio today. Hello, Eunice.
Hello.
So it's been a busy week over in the U.S. I mean, a surprise agreement was reached over the country's debt ceiling, avoiding a government shutdown, at least for now. But also there was a firestorm coming after the Trump administration announced its plans to repeal the DACA immigration program.
That's right, June. You know, illegal immigration has been a tense topic for U.S. U.S. lawmakers for decades, and the Republican leadership has been pushing for border control while Democrats want to create a legal pathway for children of illegal immigrants, also known as Dreamers. So, what is DACA, and what could be the repercussions of its cancellation? Take a look.
We are the Dreamers! The mighty, mighty Dreamers!
From San Diego, Nashville to New York, thousands hit the pavement coast to coast, protesting the Trump administration's announcement to rescind the DACA program in 6 months. Short for Deferred Action for Childhood Arrival, DACA took effect in 2012 after former President Barack Obama signed an executive order following Congress's failure to pass a comprehensive immigration bill. Those under 30 who qualify are given a chance to enroll in school or work for a renewable 2-year period, deferring the risk of deportation. Of the 800,000 who were part of the program, 690,000 remain, according to the Department of Homeland Security, after thousands moved on to green card status. Critics of DACA argue the immigration measure has been unconstitutional, as it did not receive congressional approval. While a vast majority of the so-called Dreamers are of Latin descent, many undocumented residents also come from Asia. According to 2014 data, there were nearly 170,000 undocumented Koreans living in the U.S. In terms of DACA recipients, Koreans made up the 6th largest group and the highest among Asian nations. Data from U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services shows 7,250 Koreans were on the DACA registry as of March, including 34-year-old Angie Kim. She came from Korea at the age of 9 and dreads the thought of being separated from her home.
It means that they have to go home and have a conversation with their family about their future, about making plans if they lose their jobs, thinking about whether they should self-deport themselves before they're deported by the department.
Some say the economic impact of the erasure of 800,000 people, many of them working millennials with a median age of 22, would be undesirable, especially at a time when small businesses are struggling to fill jobs. The libertarian think tank Cato Institute estimates the potential cost could be a $280 billion hit on economic growth over a decade. Amid a flurry of criticism coming also from business leaders and a lawsuit from 15 states and the District of Columbia to block President Trump's DACA annulment, the ball is now in Congress's court to come up with a workable plan for the future of these young people suddenly finding themselves at a crossroads.
Now, it's still very early on in the game, but there is some cautious optimism after President Trump showed some solidarity with the Democrats on raising the country's debt ceiling.
That's right, averting that government shutdown at least for the rest of this year. This really caught many Americans by surprise because it was the opposition party's plan that President Trump endorsed to raise the federal debt ceiling. So Washington is funded through December and nearly double the Hurricane Harvey aid package. The U.S. Senate on Thursday passed the bill by a vote of 80-17 that tied the two together, raising the borrowing limit through December 8th and a $15.25 billion initial aid package for the southern Texas region, including Houston, the country's 4th largest city. The bill then heads back to the House of Representatives for a vote expected later today. Now this, as there are now no fewer than 3 hurricanes brewing in the Atlantic Ocean. The first of the 3, Hurricane Irma, a Category 5, has intensified to become the strongest Atlantic hurricane on record. You're seeing some of the damage it's caused on some Caribbean islands there, and now it's hurling toward the U.S. state of Florida, and it's expected to hit the city of Miami, where evacuation orders have been issued, June.
All right, now before we let you go, an interesting story out of Dubai where you can now apparently purchase a luxury apartment using Bitcoin.
Yeah, absolutely. A story of a different kind. A studio for 30 Bitcoins or a one-bedroom apartment for 50 Bitcoins. It's the Aston Plaza and Residences in Dubai that's offering the world's first real estate transactions using the digital currency. Now, based on how the cryptocurrency has done this week at about $4,600 this afternoon, recovering from that dip we saw earlier this week after the Chinese government announced a ban on Bitcoin. That would be about $230,000 for that one-bedroom apartment. 150 units have been set aside to be sold this way, and the development in the UAE comes with a swimming complex, an outdoor theater, and a shopping mall for those of you who might be interested.
Well, it seems the possibilities for these digital currencies are endless.
We'll see.
Thank you so much for coming in today.
You bet.
And that wraps it up for today and this week. Thanks so much for watching. We'll be back next week with more at the same time, same place for your Business Daily. Until then, goodbye.